Hello there, my little isolate mates. My name is Adam Clery, coming at you once again, not from WhatCulture Towers, but from my palatial mansion overlooking the glorious sun-drenched People's Democratic Republic of Newcastle upon Tyne. It's time for another episode of NXT Ups and Downs. Now, just on the off chance you have been living in a cave on Mars under a rock with your eyes shut and your fingers in your ears going la la la, no horrible pandemic news for me. We are not able to record from WhatCulture Towers at the minute. We're all self-isolating at home, the entire WhatCulture team, and I am on day 14 now because I'm in a slightly higher risk category of dying from this. But you don't want to hear about any of that. You want to hear about your wrestling. And last night, NXT not only returned to our screens, but it brought some wrestling back as well with it. Last week, you may remember, was a series of mini-docs that I quite liked, but apparently nobody else did. So this week, they brought back some in-ring action for us, and, well, we'll discuss it. Now, quick point before I start, I do hope wherever in the world you're watching this from, you are doing your best to stay safe. These videos are going to get progressively weird as I spiral further into self-isolated madness, so I hope you're up for all of that. But in the meantime, yes, we still wear Thursdays on yellow. That just about works. And my name is Adam Clery, and these are all the ups and downs from this week's episode of NXT. Now, before I start, I just want to give everything a quick little caveat because these are not normal times we're living in, my friends, and thus I cannot apply the normal rules. Every single criticism I have of this show kind of has to be sort of judged against, was this okay in the circumstances, or did it just genuinely suck? And my friends, let me tell you, the commentary this week genuinely sucked. I really enjoyed it last week. The Tom Phillips Triple H dynamic worked really well, I thought. There was a very clear colour / play-by-play dynamic, even though there was no actual play-by-play. But Triple H brought the kind of insight you would expect of a 30-plus year veteran who was also literally running the show behind the scenes, and Tom Phillips kept it going relatively nicely, I thought. But there was no such goodness with Byron Saxton and Tom Phillips this week. Nobody really knew what they were supposed to be doing. It was a bit of a mess. It didn't really offer anything. It didn't add anything to production, and it kind of sounded a bit like a bad 2K DLC pack, I thought. It's a down. And as well as that, going into the show, I really did not envy whoever was going to have to open it. Like, they pretty much announced the entire card, didn't they, on Twitter, like the day before. We knew Triple H was going to be on it, so I thought, yes, that would make sense. They normally like to put Triple H on at the start because he whips the crowd up into a frenzy, but then it did dawn on me that there would be no crowd. I don't think any of us would have predicted them putting Tyler Breeze and Austin Theory out there front and centre, but I got to say, the pair of them did a pretty solid job in the circumstances. Like, despite the fact Breeze is only 32, I think he's still a 10-plus year veteran in WWE, and Theory is chock full of potential, and they got quite a solid match out of this, I thought. Like, it's not anything to write home about, but it could have been a disaster, and it wasn't. Bottom line here, it was entertaining. They have relatively good chemistry, and by giving Breeze the win and those sort of weird, he wants to take a selfie of him beating him, but he gets reversed at the end kind of circumstances, it does leave room to go back to this at some point, which I think storylines are going to be few and far between in the coming weeks, so giving us more room to grow with this, I actually quite liked. Well done, boys, up. But then, oh god, and then why on earth you would throw somebody as green as Tahuti Miles out second on this show purely to get chewed, gobbled up, spat out by Killian Dain is... It's beyond me. I mean, I know why they did it. It's just like, it's something for them to do. The roster is at the bare bones, and feeding him to Dain is just... It kind of makes sense, but still, it did not work. And the big shame about this, right, was in the opening exchanges, I thought Miles looked pretty promising, to be honest. He's got bags of charisma, he's got a really distinctive look, he's confident, he's quick, he's agile. There's definitely something there to work with, but just putting him in this match was, oh no. I actually think the guy's probably got a pretty bright future, but he did not have a bright present. This was a squash match in all but name, and there was a few really sloppy exchanges on the way before. And there was a bit where Dain flipped him over his shoulder, and you couldn't tell whether he was trying to flapjack himself or land on his feet, and it was just very all over the shop. And in the end, Dain got the Vader bomb and won, but like, tell me what either man gets out of this. Dain does a really good job of beating all these enhancement talents and then does absolutely nothing when a challenge arises. So, I mean, we've seen this before. And as for Miles, does he really benefit from getting eaten up in a 3-minute match on television? No, I don't think he does. Down. Next up, we had Cameron Grimes versus Tony Nese, and this is absolutely nobody's fault, I guess, but it got this stage in the show and I was like, Jesus, is this what it is? Like, 3 matches that nobody has asked for, 3 matches that nobody's particularly excited about, 3 matches that aren't really going to do anything substantial for NXT as a whole. Like, all full of interesting talent, all full of talented performers, but just, is this it? Don't get me wrong, Grimes versus Nese was perfectly functional, and I get why that's one of the matches you would go to in these circumstances, but just, they did have stuff on the show that was important and was happening, and they just let it feel like a bit of a house show. Like, we're over half an hour in at this point, and it's just a bit meh. And I do mean that house show comment, by the way. The whole night was just this mix of, like, people you've heard of, but they're not really established on television, then people who are established on television, but they're not the reason you're tuning in, then a handful of big names just to make it worth the admission fee. It was a really underwhelming start, this, and despite the fact the match was okay, I guess it's another down. But thankfully, things did start to pick up from there, because our next match was Aaliyah versus Xia Li. But, oh no, she's been attacked backstage, and oh, my knee is very hurty. And it's the usual wrestling thing where we don't really know what's going on, but what's that? I'm getting word that there is a replacement, and wouldn't you just know it, it's a surprise return for Io Shirai. And the weird thing is, her absence did actually feel quite well-timed, if indeed an absence can ever be well-timed, because the women's division was at bursting point with all the talent, and taking her off television meant that you could give new people like Blackheart and Green a chance to get on TV, and also rivalries like Nox and Kai, they could get a bit more room to breathe, but my god, have they missed her. Now, if you've not yet seen this match, I'm going to let you quickly guess A, who won, B, what kind of victory it was, and C, how long it went on for. Have you got it? Yep, it was Shirai squash, and not very long at all. She now advances to the ladder match proper, and obviously this was enough, the match is enough, but I want to put this little seed in your head, alright? In a parallel universe, not that dissimilar to ours, right after WrestleMania, we get Charlotte versus Io Shirai. I want to live in that one. That's the one I want to live in. Just want to quickly direct your attention to this image beside me here and let you know that while this was on screen, the direct line of commentary was, "This is the North American title picture. This is how bad." Now, I wish I was making that up or embellishing it slightly and that there was like a gap and I just kind of used a bit of creative license to make a joke out of this, but I haven't. That's exactly how it happened. Now, alright, in a way this is sort of my fault, I guess, because when I took that McFlurry lid off the head of the magical talking squirrel who'd got himself caught in it and he offered to grant me one wish for freeing him, I should have said what? Money, power, fame, chicks, money, power, fame, something like that. But I didn't, did I? I asked him to free the North American Championship from this monotonous backstory, like afterthought it had become in the Undisputed Era, so it could go on and be a fresh, new, exciting thing in NXT. And do you know what he said to me? He said, "Forsooth, traveller, I will grant you this desire, but be careful, for not all wishes are what they seem." And then with a little twitch of his whiskers and a puff of smoke, he was gone. And what did he do? He took the North American title from being an afterthought, a monotonous afterthought in another story, and made it a monotonous afterthought in another story. I'm sorry. The point I'm trying to make here is that I wanted the North American title to feel like the most important thing in any North American title picture, and it doesn't, because despite the fact Damian Priest and Dominik Dijakovic and Keith Lee keep talking about it and pointing at it, this is just a rivalry we already had before the belt came along. I hate it. It's a down. But one complaint I did have about NXT, which does at least look like that's getting addressed, is the tag team title picture. You remember, I kept saying there was no tag team title picture. And was this week's tag team match particularly good? No, it wasn't, but was at least an attempt by NXT to sort of address the division and build up one team while introducing another? Yes, and I liked that. And despite how it looked in certain stages, this was a squash match, but the thing about Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch is they can take any 4 out of 10 tag team or any 4 out of 10 match and give you a 6 or 7 out of 10 as a result, and that is exactly what they did here. Up. The only slight caveat about this, of course, is that when TM61 disbanded and Shane Thorne got into a singles run, he probably thought he was going to do a lot more with it than just get dumped back into the tag team picture with the next immediately available Australian. But that's exactly what he's done. And your man there, Vink, I think he's called, he's not very good. If that man had come along in the Ruthless Aggression era, he would already be Intercontinental Champion, but at this rate, he will be lucky to get on a TakeOver pre-show, in my opinion. Hope I'm wrong, but there you go. Next up was the second ladder match qualifier as Candice LeRae took on Caden Carter, and I just want you to picture, the dog sitting in the burning room, "This is fine" meme. Well, right now NXT is that meme, except instead of flames, it's empty chairs. this was fine. And the thing is, I'm not even really joking there, because it was fine, wasn't it? It was a reasonably solid singles match, which furthered one little storyline and got somebody else a little bit of TV time. And in the circumstances, that is both Larae and Carter maximising the opportunity. That's pretty much as good as it's going to get for the foreseeable. Carter can now add Candice LeRae to that little mini list of like Mia Yim, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair and Io Shirai of people she's had really solid TV matches with, and Candice goes on to the more important thing. It's just, it gets an up because it was fine, it was entertaining, it was a reasonably even, surprisingly even actually, squash match for Candice, and we move on. This is probably what pro wrestling is going to be for a long time, so well done ladies. You didn't suck. And your in-ring, I guess, main event of the evening was a spot of brochial distancing. You get it? Because now Matt Riddle is on his own because Pete Dunne is stuck in this country with me, I think. Somewhere, I'm not really sure. Anyway, he was taking on Roderick Strong, renewing rivalries with the Undisputed Era. Now, Matt Riddle may well have got the win in what was just your atypical house show main event, but it was not about this match, was it? It was about what happened afterwards. Malcolm Bivens, you remember him from when he was very briefly managing Babatunde. He leads an attack on Matt Riddle at the end of the match, and he introduces him to his future. Now, far be it from me to tell him how to do his job, but would it not have made more sense for him to introduce him to the two people who actually attacked him? Because as yet, we do not know their names. Anyway, the Biven boys, as I'm going to start calling them until I'm told otherwise, they laid out Riddle, they absolutely pulverised him, and they look like they're going to fill the rather noticeable AOP-shaped hole in this tag team division. We needed a power team, we needed a scary team to really round this off, and they can fill that role superbly by the looks of it. And by my reckoning, that's quite the little tag team division we've got going on now, isn't it? Because you've got the Broserweights, Undisputed Era, Grizzled Young Veterans, Lorcan and Birch, that show Bivness, as I'm going to start calling them, and sure there's one more. Nope, forgotten them. Up. Anyway, our actual main event of the evening, and Triple H, the much advertised Triple H, comes down to the ring and gets precisely 4 words out before he's interrupted by Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. And here's the thing, I liked last week's little video package. I think it revitalised both these men and indeed their storyline, but the larger issue here is that without a crowd, all wrestling in-ring promos are now high art. When you've got a crowd, everybody plays up to them and people interrupt stuff and you do call and repeat and there's pacing while you wait for them to calm down and there's no natural flow. And yes, sometimes it is brilliant, but given that you're there to shout at one other person, it's kind of a bit weird. And now that we've taken the crowds away, I'm starting to realise that I actually really like all of them. Ciampa and Gargano and Triple H, in fairness, all 3 of them stepped up their performances for this, possibly because they got to have 2 or 3 goes at it. I don't know how they filmed it, but it was really good. Way better than the level the 3 of them are usually at. Ciampa's reined in the more dorky elements of him being a face to just be sort of like sinister and brooding. Gargano's now believable as this like jealous heel little stain on the ring mat instead of just being this like, oh, I'm gonna get you. No, where's the Mamma Mia's now, Morrow? And Triple H, to his credit, did not make it about himself, which he normally does. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't going to go down as one of the brand's all-time great in-ring promos, but I was delighted that they gave us a B+ in-ring segment instead of just yet another brawl. It advanced the character work of this, where the big tear-up in the Performance Center advanced the hostilities. So I'm going to give that an up, and I just want to draw special attention to the little Killer Cross teaser we got at the end. That wasn't its own thing, I can't give that its own point, but it just made the whole thing, it just gave it a little bit of a, what's that? At the end, when it really did need it. So there you have it, those are all the ups and downs for this week's episode of NXT. Don't mind me just making myself at home. Anyway, let me know what you made of it all in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Hashtag on Thursdays, we wear yellow now, forever and always. But in the meantime, wherever you are in the world, please stay in the house. It's not that hard. I have been Adam Clery. Look, I'm doing it, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Oh, and also if you did join us for the premiere this week live in the comments, then thank you. That was fun, wasn't it? Probably. Bye.